In this video, you're going to hear the glorious sounds of the Synchron-ized Special Edition 1 orchestral library from Vienna Symphonic Library. Stick around because this is something very special indeed. Hi folks, I'm Mike and I hope you're well. I'm always on the lookout for a good orchestral library and I think I found my absolute favorite. This just blew me away the first time I loaded up a preset, so I made a quick demo to kind of showcase the different sounds in this library for you guys. Now, this only took me around about sort of 2.5 to 3 hours to make, so it may or may not be the most original sounding composition in the world. In fact, it may bear some similarity to a very famous TV theme. That aside, I want you to listen to the instruments and the tones of the instruments, and I'll be highlighting some of them on the screen to draw your attention to them as we go through. Have a listen to this and then we'll look at things in a little bit more detail on the other side. So I'm sure that for most of us, an extremely, if not the most important part of an orchestral library would be the strings. So it's no surprise that that's where I started. So I actually started off with these staccato strings. Have a quick listen. Playing a really simple part there. Now this is actually a part of a preset which is called the orchestral strings preset. We can play the string sections individually. You can see them all on the right hand side here, but I really do like this preset. It gives us access to the full range of strings on one keyboard. Now I actually used the same preset a little bit later on when the high strings came in. Have a quick listen to that. And that was actually one of the first presets I actually loaded up with this library. I was so impressed with it. It's very easy to use, very easy to get a good sound of it. Now, in the case of the high strings, of course, I was using the long notes articulation. I'm just going to quickly play it from the top end of the keyboard down to the bottom so you can get an idea of how it sounds through the different ranges. I mean, just so rich all the way through. I was really impressed the first time I heard it. And as you start to create your parts, there doesn't seem to be much wrestling with the sounds here. They seem to just work almost right away. I'll go on to some of the different ways you can get the different sounds a little bit later. But let's just move on to the next group of strings which I used a little bit later on the piece, and that was the violas. I actually did use the viola section individually. I'll just solo them for a moment so you can hear what they were doing. And in context, they sounded like this. Although it's often ignored, the violas are such a one of my favorite parts of all strings, although they often play a secondary role in things. I just love the sound of violas. Moving on from there, the final string instrument that I actually used was the double bass. It was right at the end in this kind of more sort of lonely, isolated sounding part, just using a legato double bass, and that was sounding like this. Just a really rich sounding string instrument there. Now, of course, we can change these sounds enormously, and that's through the power of the Synchron Player, which is the software which we're playing the library through. Let's just have a quick chat about that next. So all Vienna Symphonic libraries, let's just call them VSL from now on, all VSL libraries load up into this Synchron Player. It's a really simple player, but really quite powerful as well. Now, it does differ from things like Contact in that you can only load one instrument at a time into this player, or one preset at a time into this player. It doesn't have lots of outputs and lots of instruments in there at the same time like Contact does, and that is a relief in a way because it means you don't have complex routing issues with your DAW. You simply put one instance of the Synchron Player in and then you load up your preset. Now, I thought that may be bad at first because I thought it may be using a lot of memory if you do that, but really it's got a really tiny footprint. I didn't have any problems with that at all. So once you've got your sound loaded up, of course, the first way that you can change it is with key switches to change articulations. You can see the basic articulations here for this orchestral preset that I've got loaded up. They're in blue, and you can see down there the blue keys on the keyboard. So I can change in real time the style of playing. So I'm playing short notes, and using my keyboard, I can just change it to long notes. I'm sure you're used to that with many other libraries. Now, you'll also see as you select different articulations, some types appear as well. So these will depend on which articulation you choose, and those can be switched with the purple keys, as you can see down the bottom there. Now, some of them open up even further along this tree kind of system they have here. So if I had long notes selected and then I selected marcato, for example, then we also have these two different types of attack which are available here. Now, these are not switched with key switches. These instead will be switched using a CC control, which you can see here as well. So it just depends on the particular articulation that you've chosen as to what appears further on down the tree. So it makes it really easy to change things on the fly in real time just by using your keys and CCs. Now, talking about CCs, you can see at the bottom here, there's lots of different ways to change the sound here, from the volume to expression, legato, blur. Further down here, we've got attack, release, filter, etc. And these all have CCs assigned to them by default. Very easy to change. If you want to change them, you just right click on that control. You can use the learn feature and then just use the control on your controller keyboard and it'll pick that up right away. So very easy to reassign, and of course it means that you can change all of these things during the performance as well. Moving on further down here, we also have these again in a different format, showing the different controls here. The difference here is that you can change a lot of things with the curve. So you've got a master volume curve and you can change the way that things react down here. Really nice little features to be able to do that. Moving on, then we can edit the sound as well using ADSR type envelopes there. I find that really handy. Sometimes with these libraries, it's a little bit difficult to play some of the strings, for example, because they can have quite slow attacks. I like to adjust often the attack on them a little bit there. And then finally, just going over this very briefly, we get to the mix screen here. Here we can obviously change things like the EQ of the sound. We can add effects. We've got reverb applied here at the moment. Lots of things that you'd expect to be able to do on a mixer there. So all in all, a really simple player to use. A few really, really powerful features, which means you can really get control over your sound. So one of my favourite sections in the orchestra is the woodwind section, but I only happen to use a couple of instruments in this case. I used the oboe from about halfway through. It was sounding like this. And I always love to harmonise this with some clarinet, which has a much sort of softer tone to it, sounding like this. Now, some of the instruments I didn't use in this piece, but which are awesome sounding instruments in this particular library. Starting off with the bassoon, sounding like this. I'll just go to a long sounding bassoon. Here we go. Lovely hollow sounding instrument. Also flute, of course, which is a commonly used instrument from this section. Sounds like this. And then much higher up, we'll hear a piccolo. Just put that on long notes, sounding like this. So on and so forth. All of the instruments in this section, to my mind, just sound really beautiful. I hope to write another piece where I actually use all of them. By the way, are you finding this video useful? If you are, go ahead and hit the like button for me. Do it right away so that you don't forget. If you're not enjoying this video for any reason whatsoever, go ahead and hit the dislike button twice. And if you do like this kind of content, make sure you subscribe and ring the bell on YouTube so that you're notified about my other videos. Now, back to this video. Again, although I do love a good brass section in an orchestra, I didn't use that many brass instruments in here. I did, however, make use of the horns. Now, these have a lovely sort of a majesty to them, but when you push them hard, you get this nice blast and a good bit of drama from them. So softly, they sound like this. You can hear a little bit of a blast coming in there. Let me do it pretty hard. Okay, so you get that lovely sort of, very sort of edgy blast from the horns there. Moving on, I did make a little bit of use from the bass tuba. It's got this kind of little sound like this that you especially do hear from a bass tuba. And that was really just to sort of solidify some of the bass elements of the sound. It was used very, very sparingly and in a very, very simple fashion indeed. Now, some of the important instruments that I didn't use would be trumpets, for example. So let's just load up some trumpets quickly and have a listen to those. And also trombones. I did try out the trombones a little bit here and there. I'll only play one of the types of trombones here, the tenor trombone. But on the low end, I felt I already had that tuba in place. I didn't really need to use the trombones as well. But nonetheless, some really nice sounding trombones there. So on and so forth. So some really great brass sounds there. But I think one of the things that really added drama to parts of this was the percussion. So one of the most important sections of instruments in this piece was the percussion. It really helped to kind of build up and then release some tension. I used a combination of timpanis, of cymbals, and of different drums and tambourines in this piece. All together, they were kind of sounding like this at the end of each section. So the first thing you heard come in there was the cymbals, and I love to use reverse cymbals. I think that's up this end of the keyboard, like so. And we've also got some gongs in there as well, like this. Just lovely sounding things there. And we've also got, let me find the regular cymbal crashes, if I can. There we go. So just wonderful orchestral sounding cymbals and gongs there. Then, of course, I did use the timpani. I was using a combination of the roll sound, which will sound like this, followed by single hits, like so. It's very stereotypical, but you can't beat the combination of a roll finishing in a big hit with the timpanis. Nice and easy to implement there. And then I had these drums going all the way through, sounding like this. Just using those low sounding tacos there. You heard a tambourine in there as well. We've also got things like snares, snare rolls, as well as single hits. As I say, we had the tambourines, and then we also the concert toms up the top there. Just great sounding instruments. So these ones actually load in one preset. So they're all at your fingertips. You don't have to use lots and lots of different tracks in your DAW there. So the percussion played an extremely important role indeed, I think, in the flavor of this piece. And there were a few other minor roles played as well. Let's take a look at those next. Now, one of the more minor instruments in this particular piece was the piano. The poor old piano player here was relegated to playing just some bass notes, just like this. So he couldn't show off his fine piano playing skills really like that. But, you know, it was what the piece needed at the time. It really does add a little bit of depth and drama down at the bottom end there. But it is a really nice sounding piano. I'll just go through some of the octaves there. You can hear it's just a nice sounding Bosendorf piano. Apart from that, I had some harp in there, which is not really a minor role, but it didn't quite fit into the other sections. That is a really beautiful sounding harp. Let's have a listen to that. Really lovely. We've got some harmonic sounds in there for that as well. Beautiful. We also had a glockenspiel in there. You probably heard that more towards the end. That's sounding like this. Oops, let's find it. Just got that beautiful ring to it. And some other ringy kinds of sounds like the vibraphone and the celestia. And I kind of had both of those in there, although they're very similar sounding. I found that when, say, the vibraphone was there just by itself, I really had a job to get it cutting through the mix. So I used the combination of the two instruments. I think they were playing more or less in unison just to cut through the mix. So those are some of the more minor roles. Now, I had another sort of secret role in there, or another secret section, which is a little bit cheating. So I'm going to talk about that next. Okay, so I have to confess to just a little bit of cheating, because there was one element to this piece which is not included in this library, but in my defense, it's absolutely free, so you could get hold of it and make music with it as well. It's from VSL again, and it's this big Bang Orchestra. They have this available for free at the moment, and it just solves a problem very immediately. When you want that big orchestra sound all together, that's what it provides. So with the short notes, it's sounding like this. Really great. Just wonderful all the way across. I was actually using some of the fast swirls during the piece. They were sounding like this. Just great. We also have some different sounds here with the articulations. We'll go through them. Staccato, some long notes. I mean, completely free, this one. Amazing to use. We'll talk about what you need to use it in a moment. So as you can probably hear, this is no kind of toy, and as such, I'm afraid it doesn't come at the price of a toy either. Check the links in the description down below to get the latest pricing, but I know that this will be a reasonably big investment for a lot of you. But if you want to take this kind of thing seriously, it is important to have great sounds at your fingertips. Now, you can get the free Big Bang Orchestra, of course. However, with all of the Vienna Symphonic libraries, you do have to have this. This is a USB key. Now, what's that I hear? I hear lots of groans from you. I know this is not your most favorite type of technology to protect companies against piracy, but I have to say it costs $25 to buy this key. From then on, you can use it for a lifetime with all of their libraries. They got it shipped out to me really, really quickly. I would just say, although it's not ideal, and I know lots of you don't like this kind of solution, I wouldn't let that get in the way of you having this incredible sounding library. That's my opinion. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. And while you're checking out the description, do check out my link to patreon.com, where for as little as $1 per month, you can help me help you by making more videos like this. And I'll see you in the next video.